Welcome back to Vintage Shop Talk, the podcast where we dig into the real stories, strategies, and behind-the-scenes truths of running a vintage business. I am one of your co-hosts, Whitney, and we want to help you build a business that gives you life without taking over your life. And today, unfortunately, Nicole is not able to join me, but I have a very special guest coming into the studio today to talk all things business. If you've ever wondered whether your vintage hustle could be more profitable, more sustainable, more aligned with the life that you actually want, this episode is for you. Today, I am joined by Wendy Batten, a retail business coach and former shop owner who understands the vintage world from the inside out. She helps creative entrepreneurs move from the accidental business owner to confident CEO without burning out or losing the joy that made them start in the first place. We're talking about that pivotal transition from hobby or side hustle to a real intentional business and what it actually takes to build something that supports your life instead of consuming it. If you're ready to stop winging it and start building with purpose, grab a notebook and settle in. And before we dive into today's episode, as always, we want to send a huge thank you for our shop shout-out sponsors. These are vintage shop owners who have sponsored an episode here for the podcast. And we want to give back the love by sharing their businesses with you. First, we have Diana from The Lovey Shop. Her mission is to spread love every day. They carry vintage clothing, accessories, and home decor, along with consciously made handcrafted products, and give back a portion of all sales to their communities and organizations who help protect the environment. You can find her on Instagram. It is The Lovey Shop, and that's Lovie. And her website is theloveyco.com. We also have Bree from Olive and Thyme Vintage. I have to give a shout out to her. She is a fellow Kansas City dealer. She also saved my skin the other day at an estate sale that was cash only or check, and I forgot my purse at home and she covered me. So that just goes to show you how important it is to build those vintage connections and friendships. She curates beautiful, I would call her dark academia, classic vintage and antique decor items, and she also helps sellers with their branding and marketing. So definitely check her out on Instagram. She is Olive and Thyme, that's THYME Vintage with a period between each word, and her website, oliveandthymevintage.com. And last but not least, we have Maggie from Collector and Curator. She is a European importer who sells absolutely gorgeous pottery, artwork, and beautiful items that she finds throughout her travels in Europe. She told me that she has a container arriving at the end of January, which will be right about the time this episode is coming out. She is on Instagram at Collector and Curator, and also her website, collectorandcurator.com. And so thank you so much to all of our sponsors. If you would like to sponsor an episode of the podcast and get a shop shout out during an episode, you can find information on all of that in the show notes and on our Buy Me a Coffee website. And now let's dive in. Wendy, I am so excited to have you on here today.
Well, thank you. I'm privileged to be asked. So thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here, Whitney.
We also have to call out the coincidence of the fact that we have podcasts that are named the exact same thing.
They are very close. Mine's the Creative Shop Talk podcast, so we're very close. Yes, that's right.
Yes. So I have to say, I didn't find your account until just recently, and then realized that our podcast. So it seemed fated that you would be able to come on here and talk about things. So can you tell us a little bit about where you live and work and what day-to-day business looks for you right now?
Well, it's always funny. I always feel like it's kind of funny where I live. I live in a UNESCO World Heritage fishing village, a UNESCO site, which is a beautiful little fishing village in Nova Scotia, Canada. It's called Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. That's literally where I live. When I was 50, this is a whole other podcast, but the year I turned 50, we sold everything we owned and moved to our little cottage by the sea. That's where I live right now. So that's where I'm actually today speaking to you from. I'm watching boats bob behind my computer and other it's lobster fishing season. So that's where I am in the world. It's East Coast Canada, for anybody who's wondering where Nova Scotia is, way over on the East Coast. And I spend my day coaching and working with incredible humans that are building beautiful businesses all over the world. My clients are worldwide. I have clients in New Zealand and the UK and France and Australia, of course, all over North America. And so I'm either coaching on Zoom and, like I said, right here where I am right now, looking at boats bob, or I do travel quite a bit. I'm actually getting ready right now to go to New Zealand for a couple of months, meet up with clients. My daughter lives in New Zealand. So yeah, I regularly tell people it's not what I like, it's not how I envision my life being, like, at this age, because we can't predict, but we have worked really hard. My husband's a photographer, and we've been running businesses for 30 years. 30 years we've been self-employed, and we believe wholeheartedly that you design a life and a business, and I walk the talk. Like, so I've designed a life and a business that's ideal for me and my husband and our life. Again, living in a little, we downsized from a 4,000 square foot beautiful home and had 2 or 3 businesses running in another city to like a 900-foot cottage. Like, that's where I live now. So so that's my day to day is working with retailers, and my retailers are all the people I do work with in my day to day. They're all heart-centered, creative, passionate. Most of them had a passion for something first, and now they've built a life or a business and a brand around that. So that's who I get to work with. Good humans doing good things in good communities. That's
You had years and years of experience in business and running your own businesses before you came into the coaching. So, can you take us back to kind of like the origin story of how you started running your own small business?
so I know. So my husband and I have had a service-based business we had one for 27 years. So and I was, the bookkeeper and all that kind of stuff, while I also worked corporate jobs and did all the things. But I will fast forward to when my kids were, for a short period of time, I owned a coffee shop. That was awesome. Before coffee shops were things, like nobody was buying espresso drinks. So that was really an incredible experience. And just knowing business doesn't make you like a really good retailer, or, like we knew business. I had to read a P&L, but I didn't understand all the nuances of coffee shop. And I didn't the same thing when I was working for my husband. We were DIYing and creative, and I had this beautiful home that I love, DIYing, and we've DIY'd and renovated and flipped homes for, not flip to sell, but like flip because you're just always changing and always renovating. And my daughter was 16 years old, and she told me I needed a hobby other than her at the time. Ouch. Just fast forward, she was right. She moved to New Zealand shortly after that, so she was right. So my hobby became blogging, and I will make a really fat story thin, but my hobby became blogging about the DIYs and the renovations and the vintage that we were buying and how we were decorating, and loving on our home. And people started asking me about that, so I started blogging about it. And then I went to a blogging conference, and this is where, you talk about relationships and connections and meeting people. And I was so scared. Like, who was I to go to a blogging conference? I was like, I had 2 blogs up. It was ridiculous. And this was 2011, like it's a long time ago. And I met Miss Mustard Seed and Annie Sloan and all the paint brands that I was using to love on my vintage and my pieces and all and they asked me to start selling their paint, and that sounds like it happened fast, and it did. So I opened a store. I just opened a store. I opened a store to sell their paint that I was trying to get, and I built relationships with those brands, and I worked very closely with those brands. I ended up becoming Miss Mustard Seeds, like number 2. I was the distributor. I worked for several paint brands while I was running my store. And the store did really well, but it was really a lot. Like, it literally took my hobby and started teaching people to paint and selling paint and loving on people. And I love, like, my store was amazing. Like, it was amazing. But then people were asking me, how I was doing it. Yeah. And there was a lot of burnout happened because it was the same situation that maybe some of your listeners are. I loved what I did, so I was just doing, right? I wasn't acting like the CEO, I wasn't acting, even though I knew business, we were running other businesses, I knew better. But so I pieced together a lot of like strategic coaching at one point after a burnout. Actually, when my daughter left, when my daughter went to New Zealand, I couldn't stop. This always makes me want to cry. my daughter gave me like I had a very short window of time before she said, "Hey, mom, I'm moving to New Zealand," and I'm that mom that like, what? I'm like, I don't want to be an empty nester, but I couldn't get off the merry-go-round of the business. I didn't have anybody else trained. I couldn't take time to just sort of help her with her transition and just slow things down and be with her for those like that period of time. And that burnt me out. That
Mhm.
was a burnout. Like I'm gonna cry thinking about it. So my clients were the ones that were the awesome people around that. They sort of, and that was my trigger. That was my okay, I can't continue this. What am I doing this for? So I got help, I fixed everything, I pieced together coaching, and then I started helping my fellow business owners. They were like, "Hey, help us." And I just started doing like these boot camps and stuff. Anyway, fast forward all through that, I ended up working for brands and coaching. I franchised my business. And I realized that coaching and teaching, even when I was teaching paint and when I was teaching about in my business, was what I love doing. Is what I felt called to do. Um, yeah, so I actually work with clients still now in some of my programs that were in those original boot camps, like in 2000, that would have been 2016. So yeah, that's how I became a coach, and so it's all real world. And I hate saying in the trenches because that sounds like war, and it's not war. It's just life. Like that's just so I get it. I understand. I've been in the in the arena. I guess maybe is better. But, yeah, and so that's the year I turned 50 and we said, "Hey, what could it look like if we just franchised and sold." I sold my business and, well, franchised in my business at the time, opened a small studio here in my little town where I live, which I've since, stepped away from the studio here to do coaching full time. And yeah, I sold it to a friend and that business is still running. My coffee shop from 20 years ago is still running, just for the
Wow.
record. Like, like there's like legacy things happening. My husband's business we sold and we moved to this little cottage by the sea. And now I coach full time, make a living at it, love it, feel just called to just share my knowledge with people. And yeah, I feel like it's a privilege for what I do now. So yeah, that's a nutshell.
And
A long
yeah,
nutshell. Anyway, yeah.
no, but that I think so many people story really resonates. I know it resonates with me and it will resonate with them because how many times have we kind of fallen backwards into like a side hustle or hobby or just something that is fun and then before we know it, it's just running our lives, running our schedules. It just
Out of control.
creeps. It creeps and but then it's so hard because it's something we are so passionate about and it does
Right,
fill us up. So I think finding those boundaries and that balance and the things that you really truly love to do
right.
are just so important. It's interesting because to me it sounds like, when you decided to treat it more as more than just a hobby was the point of burnout when you're realizing, oh, this isn't just for fun anymore. It's actually not fun because it's stealing joy away from other parts of my life. And so I need to like actually treat it like I'm a CEO. So, what do you think, when we're looking at people who are in that space of realizing, okay, I actually do want to treat this as a business. I want to take myself seriously. What is the biggest mindset shift that people have to go through and where do people get stuck the most often?
I think the first thing I always tell people, I wish I had known that these are the things like, these are the things I wish I had known. Making an intentional decision. I mean, making an intentional decision to turn it to a business. I'm not saying we opened that store not paying it. Like, yes, I did math. Yes, I did numbers. Yes, you know what I mean? I'm not like, we don't accidentally really like fall into business, right? But that moment where, and it was maybe a little different for brick and mortar because this is like a physical like the physical thing for my vintage sellers and for people that are taking something that they love, like something that they love doing. And they're like, I want to share this with the world, or I want to make money from it, or I want to turn it to a business. Like I have an idea, a creative idea. It's really important to stop for a minute because ideas are awesome. Like, I have lots of ideas, right? And not romanticize what we think it's going to look like. Again, I wasn't crazy. Like I had a budget I was going to spend, and I thought about how I was going to uh, how many hours would I work in the store, that kind of thing, but not really. I didn't talk to other shop owners. Like I didn't, like talk to people
Mhm.
There weren't, I'll be honest, there was really like now we have podcasts and we have coaches and we have resources and we have like now it's so different. Back then it was like, mm. So I always tell people, you're ready if you sit down and you really think about what it is, what is my motivation around this? That's the key question. What is my motivation? Why am I doing this? I don't know that I could answer that with my store at the time because I loved the paint and I loved painting and I loved people. Like I love, helping and serving and whatever people, but I probably wasn't honest with myself around what I was trying to achieve with that business. So like I just like let's you know, let's try it. My very good friend Marion Parsons, Miss Mustard Seed, some of you may know Marion I mentioned earlier. So I was working with Marion for a long time, and Marion said, I said, how come you've never opened a store? Like, open a store. Like, oh, why haven't you not opened a studio or store? And we were actually in her studio, but it was a closed studio that she would do workshops in once in a while. And she said, and this is so smart. She's like, I loved the idea of running a store and making it pretty and all the decorating around it and talking to the people and merchandising it and shopping for my store. But she said, I really didn't want to run a store. Like, I didn't want to run a store. So that's like a filter right there. Like, do I like the idea of taking this full time or do I just like this hobby business that I'm running? And what is it? The question always is, what is it we're trying to achieve? Like, what's the motivation? What am I trying to achieve? Um, and what are the outcome and the results that I want? And the hard one, what am I willing to do to make it happen? And we can go further into that, but like there's so many things we have to be willing to do if we're trying to achieve something. Like know what it is you're trying to achieve. Why are we wanting to take our hobby and turning it into a business? Like what is our motivation around that? That's the key,
Mm.
I think. Yeah.
It really is. And the hard part too is that when we often jump into this, we have no idea what we're getting into and
Right.
we don't I always think of that continuum of you don't know what you don't know. You don't even know the questions that you should be asking or what you're just it's sort of like that children's book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie.
Right.
And I used to think that I was the mouse, like, "Oh, if you want a cookie, you want a glass of milk," and then but now I'm realizing, no, I'm like the little boy. The mouse is my ambition, and I think that for a lot of entrepreneurs, we do have this inner drive to work, to create something, to build that business, but
Right.
the mouse is gonna take over real quickly if we're not
It's
careful and we don't
wild, right? Yeah.
understand where we need to guide it. And it also on the flip side also, I see some women who are almost afraid to make that statement, to actually acknowledge their ambition, to say, "Okay, I'm not I have a hang up about the word reseller. Like, I know that it's an okay word to use, but to
I
me,
actually don't like
sometimes I don't like it because it feels very belittling for what a lot of people do,
yes.
as if you're
That's
just
actually
flip
my take on it too, and we can
yeah.
talk about that, I'll let's talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so it's us and because what I hear people saying is, "Well, I'm just a reseller. I'm just" and that word, that just, it's like, no, actually, you have the capacity to do more. What does that look like for your specific situation? What are you willing to do? And also, what sacrifices can you make or are you able to make, at this stage in life? So so at what point, do people what are some clear indicators? Like what when you say people should ask themselves, why do I want to do this? What are some good answers? Some like green flags, answers that people give to that question where you say, "Okay, yes, you are ready for this next step."
The first thing is, that's a great question. The first thing, the first green flag is, have you sat down and put it on paper what it is you're trying to achieve? I mean, that sounds, again, pretty basic. And a lot of people can't answer that. So, like, well, I don't know. I'm just going to, like, mess around and find out what happens. And it's like, yeah, no. Like, are you willing to take this to a business level? First, I want to mention as well, let's talk about the reseller thing too. And the word, well, first of all, the word just, I don't love that word at all. And reseller, this is where the mindset comes in. So what is it you're trying to achieve in your mindset? Like are you ready to become the CEO? Like, are you like to call yourself a boss, like, or, a leader or a business owner? I run a business. Like, I'm just a reseller to me is like, I don't know, when I hear the reseller, I always think of like some guy in a warehouse. Like, I don't know why. I just like, I'm not a fan of that word. So the keys and the things that you need to be honest with yourself. This is where I would maybe say, yes, you've got this and it's going to move forward. Are you ready to be the CEO? And that means, are you ready to like learn and make decisions and treat it like a business, not a hobby? And that treat it like a business, not a hobby is a mindset. It is a mindset, but it's also an actual thing too. Like, are you ready to give up your hotmail.com email? Are you ready to build a brand? Like, I don't mean
Yes.
to, like, you just have to treat it like a business. Like, what is it? Are you willing to do math before marketing? Are you willing to like do the
Mm,
math? Understand the numbers and grow your skills and ask for help and get out of your own way and get your ego out of the way. Are you willing to put systems in place? People hear systems and they think like they've now tuned out, just for the record. Come back to me right now. When I say systems, I mean, like, are you willing, like, instead of running around with your head cut off, I like to call them recipe cards. Like, think of it like a recipe card. Like, are you willing to wing it, making your batch of favorite chocolate chip cookies every week? Or do you have an actual recipe written down? Here's how we make cookies. Like, here's how I make my cookies, because my cookies recipe is going to be different than Whitney's, right? So here's how I buy. Here's how I do this. Here's how I. So are you like a recipe card? Are you willing to put your recipe cards in place so you can create systems? Are you willing to think forward? Like, winging it is not like, you know, winging it is not how we roll as business owners. Don't wing it. They plan ahead. They look at least a month ahead, or, like, what do I want to achieve this month? Are you willing to have a team? And a team doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have staff. That's not what I mean by team. What I mean is, who's supporting you? Like, are you willing to have support, or are you going to be all up in your own head and all ego-y about how I'm running this business? No. Like, do you have advisors, and do you have people leaning into you? Do you have help at home? What is your plan? Those are all really important steps. And understanding, I'll go back to that. Like, what is it you're willing, like, what is it you're trying to achieve? What is my goal with this business? What is the brand I want to build? I feel like, if you can, and I share this a lot with my clients, if you can remove yourself, even though you are the brand, or you are the buyer, or you are the one who's going to zhuzh it up, and if you can take that away and you can say, what does my brand look like? What does my brand look like? Because in 2026, you need a brand. Your brand can't be just like, why would people buy from you? Why does your business exist? All of those things. Like, you're just selling stuff like everybody else, right? People don't like it
mhm.
when I say that, but why buy? Like, why seek you out? Why go to your booth? Why is your booth look nicer? Why is like, that's all branding and business. If you're willing to sit down and do all of the parts of business. So I teach that there's four parts of every business. You need four things. Whether you're a one-man show or whether you're running multiple franchises, there's four parts to every business. One is being the boss, being the leader, being the
Mhm.
CEO, head honcho, queen bee, whatever you want to call yourself. There has to be a leader who's willing to lead and be a leader and make decisions and have vision for the business and the brand. There has to be that human, and that's usually us, right? Like, that's
Mhm.
usually whoever's listening to this again, if you're just a reseller, if that's what you're calling yourself, whatever you call yourself. The second thing is, you need to have a marketing plan for your brand. Something. You can't just say, well, I'm going to post on social media. That's not marketing plan. Marketing is also in pricing. Marketing is in your branding. Marketing is in who you're attracting. Marketing is in how you present your like everything. Merchandising. Marketing is in your signage. Marketing is in your price tags. Like, people think marketing is a couple of social media posts. That's not what marketing is. Marketing and sales are an important part of your ecosystem, and having a plan and willing to do that stuff. Willing to turn the camera on, and maybe if that's what depending on your goal, are you willing to learn the numbers? It's not just about waiting to see how much we sell. It's understanding, how much do we need to make? What are our cost of goods? What are our expenses? Who's going to keep the books? Like, how much money do I want to bring in? I get excited talking about this. Sorry, I ramble, but I don't mean to. I get excited talking about.
No,
And
I'm taking
number four is the operations and the systems, like business operations. Those four things they work like in an ecosystem. And I always say, think of it like, when you have a little tiny, when your kids have the goldfish tank, so if you're one little goldfish, swimming in that, you still need the air and you still need all of the ingredients to be a goldfish. Or if you're like this multi 40-gallon saltwater tank, you still need those same 4 ingredients that the goldfish needs. You just need different capacity. So if you're willing to do those 4 things what happens with most of us, myself included, we stay in the place we're comfortable. Like maybe it's marketing. I'm like really good at marketing, whatever. La, la, la. Or I'm really, really good with being the CEO, but I'm not really good with the operations, or I have my head in the sand around my numbers I don't want to make those recipe cards Wendy's talking about, like whatever. So those 4 things always end up being true. And when I talk to people who are in these situations and they're building, um, they don't always want to do all 4 things. And to simplify it even further, there's 2 big hats we have to wear. And I always think of like wearing these hats, the CEO hat, which I literally have a CEO hat behind me. So like I literally give
That's
those to my
great.
clients. I'm like, put your CEO hat on. All decisions. So there's the CEO hat, and then there's that fun front of house, all the fun stuff we do, all the stuff your hobby loves, like the buying and the zhuzhing up at the booth and all the fun things that you think, when you think of your business, that's usually what we think of. My retailers, they think of like merchandising and setting up and ordering and buying and going out, sourcing and they don't want to think about the other stuff, right? The numbers, the operations, the systems. But every single decision has to go through the CEO because is it good for the brand? Is it good for, do we have a budget for this? Have we even talked about this? How much money did we make? I don't know. And that's where I get a lot of resistance. And then I always say, wherever you feel tension right now, pay attention to the tension. That's the stuff that's uncomfortable.
Yes.
But these things make business a decision, like to be a business. And these are the realities of business. I wish somebody had told me, like, you want to take your hobby? Okay, you got to know these 4 things. You want to do this? Then I can filter through. Do I? I don't know.
Yeah.
And then there's all kinds of, other filters that I love to share when we talk about what does success look like, right? So
Mhm.
we can talk about that too.
Yeah. I have a hat that I ordered last year that felt like my word of the year, and it says onward on
Mhm.
it. And that
Nice.
might become my CEO hat. And I think the linchpin to all of this is going back to when you said you have to separate yourself from the business. I feel for me,
Mhm.
when I rebranded last year, and it
Yeah.
wasn't externally, the name wasn't a huge change because I started this as Thrifty Whitney and then
Yeah.
decided just because it was for fun. And I had a very, very small goal of paying for some camps for my kids. And then before I knew it, I'm running a
Yeah.
business and rebranded to Connard and Co. This psychological relief, I can't even describe how good it felt. Instead of it being me and my thing, and every failure or success was a reflection of my personal value and worth, and whether I was good enough to do
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
to remove that and externalize that
Yeah.
into a brand and business. So then I could
Yeah.
say, my business made this much. My business's Instagram is
Yes.
doing this. And
Yes.
if that doesn't do well, it's no longer I failed at this or I'm not good enough to do this. It is, this is what's going on in the business. And just being able to invite people into that, that
Yeah.
alone, which is why I think it's so important to say reseller is not an identity. Reselling is something you can do in your business.
Right.
But when you say, I am a reseller, that distills your identity and just strips it. Like it really is so limiting into what you think you can accomplish in your business. So I think the identity part is so huge. Why do you think so many people get scared by the systems and numbers and everything? Like why is that so intimidating to people?
Probably because it's not fun. I mean, it can be fun, and I don't mean that it's not fun. And okay, I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's just like, given a choice of, but 3 days a week. So I coach for 2 full days, and then 3 days a week, I'm working on my business, working with my team. We're doing back end work. There's like, I don't want to say it's not fun, but like, everything. You can't just Like, it can't just be the, "I'm gonna go out and buying and, like, put my stuff." So I think we all resist. I think we all have strengths and weaknesses because this isn't true for everybody. Like, this is not true. Like, it's not true. There's lots of people who are, like, knee deep into their numbers and they love it. Like, they love looking at their numbers. I do think it goes back to, so again, strengths and weaknesses, like, what are you that's why I say the majority of people spend time on the front because that's where we come from. I think I want to follow up on what you said because I think that's so important. And I think everybody, like, I hope everybody understood what you were saying about, and it's not just that you branded, new branding and, fresh and whatever, because, it was the mindset around that, right? It's that I'm building like, this is a business now. This is a legit thing now. It's not a side
Mhm.
hustle. It's not, that was hard for me. I had a really hard time, even as becoming a coach, that side hustle, like, was, that was just something I was, like, sending off the occasional PayPal link for, and then when I got a whole sales page, like, it's like, who am I to run a business, or who am I? Like, that's the question. So that could be a little bit of where that tension comes from as well too. I think positioning your mindset so that you can position your business as a business is the first, like, you have to acknowledge that. You have to talk about that out loud. You have to be ready to talk about it as a business. I think you're right. Yeah.
So, as people are starting to grow their business and scaling things up, a lot of times what you said about feeling safe and staying small, I think
Mm.
is really key. I have been facing some really big moves in my business. I'm going to England for the first time to do some ocean freight
Saw that.
importing,
Yeah.
and I woke up one morning and my nervous system was so dysregulated. It was I don't you just wake up and you're like, "Oh my goodness, this feels terrifying. This feels really scary." My nervous system was suddenly realizing, Whitney, you're doing something that's risky. And it was telling me to be super scared. And I think a lot of sellers suddenly, when they see the path that's in front of them, they get afraid of losing their freedom. And so, how do we scale intentionally? How do we do that in a way that is sustainable and meaningful without the business taking over our lives?
I think, first of all, it goes back to, well, there's a couple of components. Sometimes we scale really fast. I did. My business scaled really fast, my store. It was really popular. One more where I was adding workshops, I was buying more inventory, and it was all awesome until it wasn't, till the burnout. Like, it was just, well, and I say that because it was still all awesome even during even while I was having a burnout and crying behind the counter one day because like, anyway, the funny part was I wrote a blog post around that, around burnout, and on my store page at the time, and it's still it's still alive on my website. It's still one of the top things that, like, thousands and thousands of people, like, reached out. It was wild because it was like, "Me too, me too, me too." So my lesson from that, even looking back to that Wendy back then, and my lesson, or my how I work with my clients, and what I see in my clients all the time, is creep sets in too, right? So, like, "Oh, we could do this. Oh, we can do that. Oh, we can add this ball. Oh, like, we could get another booth. I can do this, I can do that." Like, we're very, very good at ideas, and we're very, very good at expansion, and we're very, very good at, most of us entrepreneurs is where I'm going with that. But the joy does come with a lot of that, but then the weight of it comes with it too. So I always, and this is how my clients don't get into this, it's business creep, right? There's a difference between creep and growth, right? So business creep is when things just have gone, like, what am I like, what is even happening here? Like, what is even, like, good things? Like, some wonderful things sometimes, but then other things that we have to stop and assess. So that's why I said you have to be a planner. And it's not that things always go as planned. Like, opportunities come up, and, like, I couldn't, like, every 5 years of my last 20 years, I could never have said 5 years from now, I'm going to be, traveling to New Zealand. Like, I mean, like, we did it last year. We're doing it again this year. Like, I couldn't have said, "Oh, I'll have clients and I'll be doing this, and I'll be speaking on stages, and I'll be like," what? No, I didn't predict that. What I have to do is figure out what's good for me in the next year, in the next quarter, if that's all you can think about. And what does my business need? And what do I need? And I am a life first business coach. That's the flag, and that's the flag I'm sticking in the ground, and I don't wanna say rebranded, that's not the right word, but, like, that's what I've realized, that want to bring to the table for everybody, because what does your life need right now in this part? And again, growth opportunities are going to come. And I just had a growth opportunity. I had a huge stage, a big offer to do something. I was like, my ego was like, holy crap, that's really exciting. Like, I could go do that. But then, like, my nervous system did what, it was like, is this exciting? Is this scary? Like, is it scary or is it an opportunity? And does this fit into what I want? And it didn't fit in. It was going to involve really stressful travel for me. And it was just not. And I was like sad to say no, but then my nervous system was like, good move. It wasn't trying to, it wasn't just protecting me. It was like, so having a bit of a plan, this is what I'm trying to explain. Having a bit of a plan and knowing what you need from your business, because what Whitney needs from her business, what, Susie needs from her business. I mean, you have kids and you're traveling, and you've got ambition, and we all have different desires and goals for our business. And so growth, as it grows, if it's growing in the container you keep it in, that's manageable for you, it's more manageable. Like, I wish somebody had said that to me, like, instead of just, "That's a good idea, and that's a good idea," and, like, everything was awesome, like I guess said, until it wasn't. So my advice is always understanding your motivation, understand your motivation, and understand what you need from your business. And I am a reverse engineer. So how much money do you need? How much time, how many hours do you want to work in your business? What's your current lifestyle? Do you need to make money? Like understanding how much effort and energy you want to put into a business is really important. Like, I have clients right now that are vintage sellers, and my clients just call themselves, not just, but they call themselves vintage sellers, and then they do multiple things. Most of them, some of them have brick and mortar, many of them have online businesses. A lot of them are doing like the live social selling right now. I'm going to give a shout out to one of my clients, Amy Check, who is like an amazing vintage seller, like amazing. She's been with me for years. And Amy, like from Schoolhouse Salvage is her business. And I want to encourage everybody to go watch her. But she's putting 5 kids through university. So her era right now, it's like her kids all work at this, they're doing live selling there, but she's built this incredible brand on purpose, with intention, doing things that fit into her current lifestyle that didn't a few years ago when her kids were young. Like, we're building these
Mhm.
businesses, and if you can anything, again, I get excited. Think of the container that you want your business to be in that serves you, because we deserve to have businesses that serve us. So whether it's income, whether it's energy, whether it's impact, whether it's, joy, like, well, joy always has to be there. But I see people build these businesses. They start with a container like this, and then they just shove everything they have into that container, and the container is bursting. There's no time margin. There's no money margin. Their family are like, who are you? I don't see you. And, like, we don't want that to happen. And I don't know
Mhm.
if it's helpful, if the visual of the container, but like, what does your business need to look like before
Yes.
to serve you? And you get to pick, you get to design a business. You get to design a business that works for you at your stage right now. And then it can change. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that visualization is very helpful, even from a physical aspect for those of us who are selling the vintage and antiques from our homes.
Yeah.
The creep, I laughed because I said, we know what the creep is, the
Yeah.
creep of
Yeah.
inventory that gets into your garage and everywhere else. And
Right.
one thing that I heard this on a podcast, I think it was a Cody Sanchez podcast, and she talked about or her guest talked about the difference between growth and scaling, and
Yes.
how growth is something that where everything is growing and you're, more money, more energy, but it is growing. But scaling is where you are getting more results, exponentially larger results from the same amount of energy or
Yeah.
investment.
That's leverage.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
leverage, yes. And
Yeah.
that's something that I think it's just a very slight nuance, but there is a difference, because that's where I feel like I'm at. I don't want to, I can't open a brick and mortar. I don't necessarily want to do this, but I have space in my home. I have a booth space at a mall. I have an assist. How do we leverage the resources that we have to get a bigger result, work smarter, and think about ways? And one of the things I want to also call out, that you have this planning your business year resource that I
Yeah.
worked
Yeah.
through, and I
It
think
is.
it's on
Yeah.
your website, I believe.
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
It was for me, especially because I'm a big journaling person, like just to work through all these questions that you're talking about over the space of a week or two to sit down and journal and write. And I love how some of the questions were very similar, which is, I felt like, because it made me dig down. It's like, so what do you think? Okay, now we're going to write it again. And it just uncovers these layers in our thoughts and emotions and intentions of figuring out, like, okay, actually I'm coming and it's like a spiral effect where you're revisiting it, and every time you're drilling deeper down into what you want to actually accomplish. And for me, like, planning ahead for a full year I can't do that. My husband was planning out some budget stuff, and he's like my CFO, joint executive, and he's super into spreadsheets. So he forces me to kind of externalize all these things. And I told him, I don't know what I'm going to be spending in December, but I can tell you, like, in the next 6 months, like, this is where we want to be. So that's one thing I think can be very helpful for people. If it is too overwhelming to think about a year, like even thinking the next 3 months, what does it look like? How do I want my business to really move forward? One of the things that I want to touch on too that you mentioned with marketing, which I think is really good, is even the price points that you set being a marketing tool. And I know I definitely, the first few years, for whatever reason, felt that, and again, because I didn't have a brand, everything was me. I felt very afraid to price things according to full market value because I felt like I was pricing myself. So how is that something that you help? Like, what advice do you have for people to price confidently and to build the profit that actually supports their life?
So being nicely priced will put you out of business, first of all, or wear you out or break you down, or so we also are not pricing. I always like to say, we're not shopping from our own pocket. And so you're a vintage seller. Like, you go and you already know, like, so I'm going to your booth, and I'm a collector, and I just want. So there's a couple of things I always say that will work, especially, and please hear me with my heart and my love for everybody listening, in 2026 right now. People are looking for modern nostalgia. They're looking for, like, analog things. Like, this is the big trend. They want comfort. They want, like, this is worldwide too, by the way. This is predominantly in the US right now, because I guess people are connecting, and all the, maybe chaos that they're feeling one way or the other in their lives right now. So there's a huge opportunity to speak to the right people with your branding. And I say this again with love. You're not necessarily serving or think of your premium clients. And by premium, I don't mean like the wealthiest. What I mean by is the ideal, beautiful, most amazing clients that you have or that you want to have. So a lot of vintage sellers that I know, they have their stuff in malls they don't align with their brand, or they don't feel like their brand is good enough, or they haven't created a brand they don't have self standards. And again, please hear me with love and affection for you. Your brand dictates your pricing. So if your brand is messy and blacky, and it's like just not, and you're only showing, I always feel like bad saying this, but like, think about who your premium clients are and what malls are they shopping at? Like, where are they? What do they need to hear? And you deserve to be selling your products. You care, you buy, you go to, you're going to England, you're going to Canada, whatever you're doing, you're washing them, you're selling them, you're building. What is the community you're trying to build? This is the brand. Like, the branding is what's going to dictate your pricing. So people will say to me, nobody in the mall nobody in my mall will pay that for, whatever. And I'm like, well, then you're in the wrong mall, or your business isn't viable. Your business is not viable. Please hear me, if you cannot price properly. You don't have a viable business. And that's hard to hear sometimes. But when you start pulling your brain, I got my finger out. My clients always laugh because they're like, when Wendy gets her finger out, it's like, I'm so affectionate. I'm so, like, I care so much. I care deeply. I really do. I really care deeply that you're doing all this work and that you're wanting to share your products. So share your brand at a high level of standard, at a high standard. Be proud of your brand. Be proud of what you're building. Drive, like, customers to that, you know. I'm thinking specifically of a couple of clients that I have that kind of they're quiet about their brand. They've got this, and branding is not logos. I don't understand where people think that that's not what branding is. That's decorations. Like the
A
color of your
hundred
logo, the
percent.
style of your logo, the way your logo looks, that is decorations. Even your signage and all that, that's just decorations. That's not branding. Branding is your energy, your enthusiasm, your like your experience. Like they're buying you. And I know you said it's not you, it's really not you, but they're buying your brand's experience. So they're buying how they feel when they see you. They're buying how they feel when they walk in your booth. They're buying with feelings, because we can buy stuff anywheres. I say that all the time. You can get coaching anywheres. It's like whether you vibe with me or you don't. Like you have to. Nothing good comes without nothing happens without energy and enthusiasm in 2026. People have got to feel smile worthy buying from you. So that branding might be you. It like just showing your stuff is not enough anymore on socials or emails or wherever. It's like showing why and how and you and the behind the scenes. You do a wonderful job at that, Whitney. That's why people, when you did a post yesterday and I shared it, and I had all these clients of mine, all kinds of people popping in. They're like, "Oh, I love her. I love her. Like I follow, listen to her podcast." And I was like, "That's so cool. Like it's your branding, right?" So, all this to say, your pricing, because I we're talking about pricing, your pricing is part of that branding package. It's like it is what I don't want to say it is what it is. That doesn't sound good, but like be confident in your brand and be confident in the client, that premium client. Again, do some journaling around that. Like, who is it I want to serve? Not who is it I am serving, because sometimes they're not the same person, right? Like right now, I'm serving people, well, they're always nickel and diming and they won't pay anything. If you come across as a cheap,
As
reseller,
thr
right?
thrifty Whitney, right?
Thrifty,
That
yeah, like,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
So I used to always talk about in my store, and I had like an epiphany one day. Like I used to always talk about affordable. I used to say I sell affordable paint. My furniture is affordable. And I was always talking about that. Like, and this was quite a few years ago. And then one of my very wealthy clients who used to come in, and she would drop like, $300 or $400 every time she'd come in. And I would gasp internally every time. But she wouldn't think anything of it. Like she would come in and she would just $300 and a couple of things of paint. She'd buy the best paintbrushes I had. So then she'd sign up for $100 class. And my brain was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. She's the one who said to me, Wendy, stop saying affordable. She's like, you're not shopping. Like my bank account, she used to joke and say, my bank account's really high. I have a lot of money. And so do my friends. So I was shopping from my own bias in my own pocket at the time. Like $300 in paint isn't what I would have paid. I would never have hired myself either. I used to do custom painting. This is kind of funny too. Like I would never have hired somebody to custom paint anything for me. But guess what? Because I used to charge a lot. At first I didn't. And then this same wealthy client said, Wendy, you can't charge me $100 to do that. You gotta charge me like $500 to do that. And I was like, like, but it's not just branding. It's about positioning. And it's about what do my clients need? Like always think about your clients, right? Always care about what your customers care about. So you're building a brand that cares about your people. Again, I'm going to go back to Amy, and she has like this, like at Schoolhouse Salvage, and she has this clientele, like they love everything she does, like everything. They're supporting her. So, she prices accordingly. Like she has good pricing. She cares about a good pricing for her brand, her
Mhm.
business.
Mm.
So please don't mark things down. And if you're listening to this and you're saying, yeah, but my people won't pay that, or yeah, but I don't have nice enough stuff, but yeah, but the people in my area won't. I want you to just think about that for a minute. That's a tension, and that might be a story you're telling yourself. Maybe.
Mm.
Yeah.
This really connects with a couple of things. Have you ever read Profit First? I feel like you may
Yeah.
have mentioned it.
I run profits first in my business. I can't imagine not running profits first in my business. Yeah.
Okay, I hope that I've talked about it on an episode that I actually just released today. And I've been telling everyone to do it because my finances are completely on the profit first basis. But one of the things he talks about is looking at your 80/20, like where is 80% of your revenue coming in from?
Yeah.
And what clients are your top clients? And usually it's a very small percentage. And then having the courage to kind of let go. And I think let go of that. And I think for us as vintage dealers or antique dealers, part of that is letting go of low-end inventory that feels safe because we know it will sell, but
Yeah.
it is just to sucking up so much energy and space, and I think that part is part of scaling as well, is having the boldness to say, "I'm going to invest in better inventory, and I'm going to attract the right kind of clients." There was someone Saved by Design is a furniture restorer. She posted some stories maybe a few months ago about an experiment she did with lowering her prices, and I wish I had saved it. I sent it to some friends, but I guess I didn't save my screenshots. And she said, "I realized when I dropped my prices, it brought in a level of clients who didn't value what I was doing. They wanted to nickel and dime me. They wanted to argue over $50 or $100. They wanted to criticize. They did not value my work. They didn't value the pieces. That affordability is very high on their priority list. And if we want to run sustainable, actual businesses, you have to attract clients who really value what you do. And I always say too, when we talk about malls, one of the reasons that I love the mall that I'm in is that they they have the 3 key things. This is the customers you want. You want people who understand the value of what you're offering. They want the item you're offering, and they're willing to pay for it. Because there are a lot of people that may have the money, but they are not willing to pay for the value of the item that you're
Yeah.
offering.
Yeah.
And so having that, I think, is just so, so key. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, because nice pricing, we feel like we're being nice by having cheaper prices or lower prices, and it will just suck the life out of you.
And that to your point about the mall, being in a mall that doesn't have rules, being in a mall that has like you want to be someplace where they're particular. I'm going to give you an example of there's two malls that I love to go to, and one is just flea markety, right? Flea markety, and the other one presents as a higher end. And I will tell you, like on a Sunday afternoon, when I only have a couple of hours, I go to the nicer one because I don't want to dig. And that's just not where I'm not, whatever. I like things presented beautifully. I like displays. I like to just, like, I'm like, I did my digging when I had my other houses. Now I'm like, okay, sometimes I just want to go. And the same item could be in both places, obviously, but I'm not price shopping, right? So, and then the clientele, and it's not a better clientele, it's just different, right? So, really understanding who you're serving or who you want to serve. The other part to the pricing is you need to have the mindset to value your own work and to do your profit first marketing, or not marketing, but your money management. How much money do you need to run your business? How much money are you wanting to make out of this, 10 by 10? And like you have, like, there's math to that. Like, how much money per square foot do we need? And if everything in your booth sold today, would you have enough money? Like, no, maybe not. Like, or maybe yes, I don't know. Like, you have to just understand, don't wait for things to sell, like reverse engineer. What do we want to sell? What pricing do we need to be at? And again, I'm going to shout out to your podcast around the profits first. If you haven't listened to Whitney's podcast, it's going to be out by the time I'm sure that we do this.
Yes.
I really like it was after 30 years of being self-employed and all of the ups and downs and the way that I'm so perfectly imperfect around all of my ecosystem as well too. We all are. There's nobody who's doing everything perfect. Like nobody is. The biggest growth shift I've ever had in my life personally and in my business, happy growth shifts that like feel good, like, oh my gosh, like my brain just loves it, was implementing profits first. So we do it with our family, like my family finances. And that's how I'm going to New Zealand this year. Like I literally, like I went to, like, I did not like, and I say this, and that's how I run my business, is through profits first. I'm plugging that because once you get an understanding of that, I've had a profits first coach for years. I have like who's really good friends with Mike Michalowicz in his course, right? So, or in his masterminds. But all of this is part of the ecosystem. Like get your branding really nailed. Like you get to decide what your brand looks like. You get to decide the kind of business you want to have. You get to decide, but you have to make the effort. You have to make the time and the effort to build a good brand. And are you willing to do that? That's back to that willing thing, right? You get to like decide if you're only going to work 4 hours a week or you're going to work 70 hours a week. We get to decide that. And yes, there's seasons and, building resilience around confidence around your own standards. And I want to encourage everybody to raise their standards. We have a tendency to lower our standards, like, "Oh, it's okay as it is." Think higher of yourself, think higher of what you deserve, the time off you want, the customers you deserve. What's the micro upgrades
Yeah.
in your branding even right now that can do that? So, I hope that's
My
helpful.
my yeah, and my husband and I had an interesting conversation because we were looking at our so we did Profit First, and
Uh-huh.
just really, really quick, if someone hasn't heard about this, it's basically an envelope system, and you have all your money come into one account, and then you have a percentage allocation, you put it into 4 other accounts, and that way you always have money for taxes, you always have money to pay yourself, you have money for operating expenses, and then you have a profit bank that's emergency funding and also profit disbursement, just like a big grown up company.
Yep.
But we were talking about, okay, what do I need to be paying myself? And he said, well, how many hours do you work? How much do you pay your assistant? And I told him, he's like, well, pay yourself at least that much. I'm like, oh, yeah, I probably should pay myself the same amount that I pay someone else to work with me. And what I love about Profit First, and also I think this should apply to all the systems, is that it acknowledges our humanness and our
Yes.
human whims and imperfections instead of forcing us to fit a model of accounting and money management that has unreasonable expectations of our self-control. It actually creates a framework and said, this is how I am. And this is why my systems, I can tell you what systems work for me, but for you, you may need to build a completely different system, and that's fine. But it's figuring out, who am I as a person? One of the big things I did, not last year, but the year before, was go through an emotional intelligence course.
Yeah,
And
me too,
holy
actually. I
moly,
just did that,
oh
actually,
my,
yeah, yeah.
wow. I feel like that I had to go through that first before I could do the rebranding, before I could flow into this. Like the past, I always say,
I love that. I love that, yeah.
there is nothing that will bring up all your personal junk than having a family and having a business. Like, man, if you have a business, you will be forced to know yourself. But, with Profit First and any other system, it's like, okay, what, where do I find that beautiful cross point between who I am and how I work naturally best and the
Yeah,
systems to kind of create guardrails to keep me functioning in a really fruitful, healthy ways. Yeah.
yeah, we don't fit into boxes, nobody does, like, all the shoulds and musts that we tell ourselves, and I just wanna give everybody permission, like, the shoulds and musts like, we need to abolish that, like, "I should be as successful as Whitney," or, "I should be doing this." No, what do you want? Like, how do you want your life to be? And no more shoulds. That's actually my abolished for 2026, no shoulds and musts, and I just wanna encourage everybody to make sure that you're, like, building the business and the life of your dreams. Time is collapsing. Like, I'm a certified life coach as well too. That sounds always dorky when I say that, but I felt the need to do that on top of my business coaching because that's what we're building. We're building lives, right? So time is collapsing. Whether you're 20 years old listening to this, I mean, we're not. So let's go build businesses that are cool and fun and rewarding, right? Like, why? Like, yeah. Anyway, I hope that.
Yeah, carpe diem. I One of my mantras for last year, I shared this in a podcast as well, but I said 6 months from now, we messaged about this, I think. Months from now, you'll either have a list of excuses or a report of success. Like, it's your choice. It really is our choice.
Decisions every
And
day.
that it's amazing to think that we have the freedom to make that choice. Okay, as we wrap up our conversation, you have so many resources available. What is a good place to start for someone who maybe is just getting to know you and your resources and the coaching that you offer? Like, where should we start in accessing those?
So I do have a podcast. So it's called the Creative Shop Talk
Shop
Podcast.
Talk.
Very similar name. So we'll make sure we have that. I also have, I do have a couple of free resources. I'm gonna give Whitney planning, if that's okay, Whitney. We haven't talked about this. So I can give you a link to a planning guide. A resource to the planning guide. It's like somebody called it, one of my clients said the other day, she called it like a personal retreat guide. She said it was like
Yes.
that's, a personal retreat guide and journaling prompts, I guess is what it is. So we'll drop that into your show notes. Anybody can reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram. I love chatting in the DMs. It's me in the DMs, by the way. Somebody said that my team were doing a good job in the DMs. I'm like, I do my own. I have a team, but I do my own DMs because I love conversations. I love continuing conversations in the DMs on Instagram. If anybody, wants to follow me at Wendy Batten Biz. But yeah, I have private coaching. Sometimes people just need like a business strategist to look at from a different point of view and look at things differently. And I love to look at from like the 10,000-foot view of what's possible. And I love to think in possibilities. And I have a Mary Poppins bag of tools and resources. If you don't see it on my website, or you don't, because we are actually shifting our website right now a little bit for offers. But if you need marketing and sales, like, get that. If you need, we have different things, or I have different things, but other people have different things as well too. And if you need a resource that you don't think that I have, or I'm not the right person for you, I know a lot of people. I'm well connected. I got a lot of relationships are rocket fuel in my world. I believe in sharing. I have so many friends who are experts in beautiful things, and just ask. I always say, like, I love to just ripple that down as well too. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wendy, this has been such a valuable conversation. I have a page full of
Thank you.
notes next to me.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your insight and your experience so generously. And if you're listening and nodding along and you're feeling both inspired and a little bit called out, know this: building a vintage business that gives you freedom does not happen by accident. It happens when you start making intentional decisions, putting the right foundations in place, and allowing yourself to step into the role of business owner, not just seller. You can find Wendy and learn more about her work at wendybatten.com. Her last name is Batten. We'll have all the links in the show notes, and you can access all of the resources that she has talked about. Make sure that if you really enjoy this podcast, please subscribe to Vintage Shop Talk, leave a review, share this episode with a fellow seller who needs the encouragement and the help. And if you would like to help us keep the lights on and bring you more conversations, why not sponsor an episode? We would love to give you a shop shout out. Just look for the link in our show notes to donate starting as little as $5 to help us keep bringing these wonderful conversations and people right into your earbuds. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.